be with each other. And in this, we allow ourselves to fill with the essence of love, knowing that this is what guides us forward. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you. Sherry is the director of our chaplain program. Let's see, the chaplains will be having the healing circle right after the service, so you can just go right through that door afterwards or around and get into that, or maintain the energy that we've created here. Next week is our drumming circle. It's Afro-Caribbean drumming with Dominic Garcia, and for those of you who think that the vibration is a little too enthusiastic for you, I have a discussion group over in the chapel at the same time. So you have two options on the first Wednesday of the month. Thank you, salad people. And we're deep into salad now. And it's just going to get more interesting as the year goes on. And again, if you're interested in helping with that, we can always use more people. We're not asking anybody to commit to a night a month anymore. It's like if you can just come do it once every other month, we're happy to have you. So check in with Pat Harvey if you're interested in doing that. Tonight I'm going to interview Laurie Vela. She is our youth education director, and she does multi-generational work, and tonight she wants to talk to us about how spiritual parenting, and that would be parenting your children, your parents, and yourself. And that's all the introduction I'm going to give her. I'm just going to have her come on up. Welcome, Laurie. And so the first thing, there's a microphone right there. We have two events coming up that we want to just briefly describe. The Playshop on Saturday, and then that camp. So just go ahead and...
Yeah, just real briefly, I'm doing a Playshop here on Saturday, and you guys are going to get like a little taste of it tonight. So if you leave going, I could use some more of that, you could still sign up. That would be great. And we'll have lunch for you, and we'll just have some experiential time mixed in with singing and some group sharing and some small groups and a lot of hands-on stuff. I've got a few hands-on things for you tonight too. And then my camp is something that I've been doing since 2005. It's a family camp. It's in the vortex of energy up in the Sacred Sierras at the base of Thunder Mountain and Silver Lake. It's a gorgeous place, and it's called Feathers of Freedom, and it's based on the idea of freeing your heart more and more, just to play and to be in that nature energy. It's an intergenerational camp. There's a lot of choices of things that you can do, and that's coming up in August. And I'm really happy to be partnering with Spiritual Life Center this year. So you can sign up through Spiritual Life Center, and they get a little registration fund, money for the good of the cause here. And so that's happening August 17th through 19th.
And for Saturday, they can sign up online. You can still sign up online, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, you can, yeah.
So you can do that tonight when you get home.
Or tomorrow morning when you wake up thinking about it.
So, Laurie, we want to talk about spiritual parenting, but my first question really is, how did you get on this path? Not necessarily, your spiritual path, but eventually, yes, your spiritual path, but specifically, how did you end up, what took you from like that into what you do now? And how did you grow into that?
So I was a mystic child, and so there was no getting away from that kind of reality where I was seeing God everywhere. And so as I grew into my adult self, as a teenager, I said, oh, heck no, I'm tired of being the weird one. I'm going to get away from all that. And it's like, good luck, you can't run that fast. And so then I realized, okay, this is who I am. So how do I make that happen, right? And because I had all these experiences as a child and growing up, and people were always saying, that's just your imagination, that my imagination got a lot of kudos. So I got really into my imagination, and I started writing and illustrating and performing these storybooks, Laurie storybooks. And I got into literacy and did my education. And then I realized, then I had my son, and I realized, well, literacy is great, and there's a lot of different kinds of literacy. You know, there's financial literacy and there's environmental literacy. Well, where's the spiritual literacy, right? And in some religious traditions, they have their teachings pretty well indoctrinated, shall I say, you know, and that's their form of literacy. But I was on this new thought path, and so I thought, we need to kind of focus on that in terms of, you know, where is the literacy just means like a fluency in a language or in reading or in writing, and so where's the fluency work for spirituality?
I want to take it one step back. Did you grow up in a religion, and apparently your parents were supportive of your weirdness?
Oh, no, of course not. What are you kidding me? I grew up kind of pretty much where I live now, although I was away for a while. But I lived in the country, and so nature was always this great teacher to me. And my mom, when we were really little, we went to like some Methodist kinds of churches and stuff. But then like early on, it was like, oh, we're going Catholic. And because I knew God from the flowers and just from all these different experiences I was having in my experience of life, I got really into the Catholic Church for a while, you know, and I'd walk down there and do Stations of the Cross, and you know, it was like I was really into it. And then I figured out one time, like, I think I was a nun. I actually wanted to be a nun for a while, and two things got in the way, Deborah. Number one,
and those were?
Well, number one, I needed the costuming, clearly. I could not picture myself in the habit. You know, the nuns we had the habits. And I was like, oh. And I really wanted to have kids. So, you know, there was that. And my parents, you know, they were supportive in certain ways. We lived on this ranch that was homesteaded like in 1848. So like I saw the ancestors and I would hear them and I would say, oh, I had a conversation with Uncle Al today, and they're like, oh no, that's just your imagination, you know, and or I'd come in like, I've been talking to the flowers, and they'd be like, oh, doesn't she have a great imagination? So it's not like they just told me flat out, you're crazy. I mean, they kind of did sometimes, but mostly it was just kind of like that. So, yeah.
Okay, so, all right, that background is always interesting to me because it's like what we come out of, and I have lots of conversations with people in this community who are raised very, very strictly in the Roman Catholic Church, and it's so interesting to watch them go through the shifts and the changes. Mm-hmm. So, okay, so you've had a son, and you're thinking about spiritual literacy, so how does that grow into, or, you know, how does that grow from there?
So my son, luckily, was a lot like I am, and so I had him in the recording studio at 4, and he was singing these songs and doing these things with me. And we were praying, you know, from the beginning. We would pray every morning and every night. And as he was growing and getting more language and being more vocal with me, singing and doing these different things, I just started realizing, oh, we're missing something here. You know, like the ABCs are great, but what about awareness and beauty and compassion and, you know, and those sorts of things. And, you know, truthfully, really enter SLC. Dun, dun, dun. I had left his dad back east when he was 4 and came back, and I was looking for spiritual community, and I'd been involved with Unity years before. And so we started coming here when he was 4, and it just started popping for me. I was like, hey, do you guys want a choir? And let's get, you know, and so we started developing the songs, and the songs were really first, and we did a lot of those songs here with kids from Spiritual Life Center. And from there, I developed a website, New Thought Families, and I just started putting all my literacy work towards these bigger concepts of what it is to be spiritual beings in human bodies.
So it evolved, so you started putting that out there, and then somehow or another you started translating that to also working with, I mean, how did you expand this? How did this, in your own consciousness, as you know, you're looking at going, okay, I'm doing this with kids, I'm doing this here, how did it grow out of that? What was the next step?
I'd say the website. And in May of 2008, I started doing a daily play and pray calendar. And and so I've actually been running reruns on that for a while because it's a lot of time and energy to produce a daily play and break calendar. But it was great. And my son and I used to do the recordings, so the audio was there. And by producing the work, it made me more mindful of the work. Do you know what I mean? And the hope is that people would actually engage with that daily play and prayer calendar, because the thing about anything that we want more of in our life is we need practice. We just do. And that's why it's so important to pray every day. But beyond prayer, there's all these different things that you can do. And so the literacy work for me has always been, I've always been a performer and, done different things with the books and the songs. And so for me, that was the natural way to put across spiritual literacy work, is basically the same way I was doing traditional literacy, which is about reading and writing and that sort of thing.
So what kind of advice would you be giving to parents on how to start working with their own children at home if they don't have a professional spiritual literist? Okay, I can't even say that. If they don't, how do you start working with your own children in that respect at home if you don't have a church or if you don't have someone like you in your pocket?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, a lot of different things come to mind, and I'm like, yeah, go to the website, and there's a daily invitation for you and all that. And there are resources you can plug into. But the short answer and the best answer is start growing your awareness. And I tell people this all the time, it's the same as brushing your teeth. It really is. Now, every kid has a different kind of personality. Every family has a different kind of personality. So some of the things that I did with my kid, I could suggest that you do with your kids, and it might be a great fit for you, or it might be like, my kid would never do that, So it's about being aware of your heart and the hearts of the people that are with you. And whether that child is 2 or 92, it's tapping in to what calls them forward. What is their spirit saying, And a lot of times we want to make it about, do step 1, 2, 3, or, read this book or do that. And all that stuff is great and it can all help. But in the end, the answers are in our hearts. And we tend to be too busy to listen. And we tend to make up stories about how it's supposed to be, or how it's not supposed to be, especially in parenting our parents, I have found. That's a really hard one for many, many reasons, but also parents go through it with young children who are different on any way, shape, or form. And let's face it, they're all different, But part of what gets in our way is we think it has to be a certain way, or we're trying to plug in a certain set of rules or standards or something, and it's not really working. And so it's like the easiest thing and the hardest thing ever is listening to our hearts. And so prayer is definitely a way to connect with each other. That's kind of, the first thing. But
what would be a concrete example of something that you did with your son that may or may not work for other people, but just, like on someday you're just sitting there and it's like, oh, let's do this. What would one of those things be?
Okay. So, on a daily thing, prayer. And I know that sounds silly, but like when he was tiny, it would be like, he would look around the room and say, thank you, God, for the chair. Thank you for the light. Thank you for that. And then we would do that with our food. And we would think, not just thank you for this food, but thank you for the soil and the sun and like the whole circle of life that went into the food. So it's about growing that awareness. And then we did all kinds of little projects. For a few years I had like a bulletin board. This is such a teacher thing, but, and like our month would be about compassion and, and then I would actually have spiritual practices that I would do with him. And we did a heart wall a couple years running where we wrote each other heart notes on these and we put them up on the wall. And, he was more into games than I am. Like he loves board games and that sort of thing. And so sometimes it's just about meeting them where they are. So I don't like to play board games. I know I'm weird, and he did. And so one year I just gave him the gift of every week I will sit with you and do a board game or anything else that you want. And that doesn't sound like a spiritual thing, but it's just about practicing the presence and being there with your child, again, however old they are, meeting them where they are and being of service to their heart,
Well, that also sounds very much like acceptance. I mean, because he probably knew that you didn't really like board games, but you didn't tell him he was dopey for liking board games. You just agreed to play one with him once a week.
Yeah.
And so you weren't making him wrong for it. You're
Right.
just like keeping your boundaries, but still accepting him for what he wanted.
It's definitely acceptance and getting into the spiritual side of ourselves. It's unconditional love. And our children are great for teaching us unconditional love. I don't know about you guys, but he was the one to teach me about what it really means to love somebody so deeply no matter what. And now I'm having that gift with my parents. That I fought a lot harder. Like with your kid, it's like it's just easy, but
Why would you fight it with your parents? As we're all going,
And
Yeah.
so, and yet what I've noticed is as much as I can do that and however often I can do that with my parents, that's where the gift is, where I can meet them exactly where they are and try to give them what I can give them to, to fill their heart, to fill their physical needs, without that resentment or that feeling that it should be any different than it is. And when they're being goofy or when they're being like that, or, I know some people have the thing where they don't remember or they don't, and so being able to be in that God heart, and love them as unconditionally as possible. It's like if you think about, we're all children of God. So early on what I did is I tried to look at my son initially as God would look at us. And there was this great time when he was in the back seat, just screaming, and you're trapped in the car, and you're like, just go to sleep. And all of a sudden, I had this sort of epiphany. I looked in the rearview mirror, and his pain was real, but I was like biting my lip from laughing because I forget what he was so upset about, but it just seemed so ridiculous to me, like, come on, really? And he was tired and all that stuff, right? But I had this epiphany. I was like, wow, that's probably how God feels about us, like most of the time. Right? Like, God, are you going to cry about that again? Really? And right? And so coming into that place of just total surrendered, unconditional love as much as we can. And love really does cure everything,
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not that simple for most of us. And,
Not at all.
yeah, and especially when it comes to parents, because we have this walk we have to do, becoming adults ourselves, and then learning to back up and see our parents as people. It's just like this level of maturity is when you can finally separate out enough to see your parents as people who have their own challenges, their own concerns. And I think that's when we can start. I mean, even if forgiveness is, we need that, is when you can start backing up and going, oh, it's like now my mother's been, 1983 is when she left the planet. But as I've gotten older, and I'm not sure how this is happening, I realize how hard life was for her generation, for women. Mm-hmm. I mean, in the 30s and 40s and even 50s, life was very hard for women. Mm-hmm. And I had no sense of that growing up because we were too busy trying to get our skirts short enough and be baby boomers and, burst through whatever was. But I can look back now and see, wow. And of course, she never talked about it. So I got all of this like pent up energy, but I never knew where it came from. Mm-hmm. But, and she's been gone long enough. It'd be nice if I could have gotten all the way there before she died, but I didn't. But we were okay when she died. But still, it's that whole sense of being able to back up and say, "Oh, you're a little kid, and you truly think you're truly in pain right now, even though it's because you dropped a straw on the ground."
Right. Yeah, and we're in a very interesting time in our humanity, and most generations before us had a village, so it wasn't like we were so isolated as families. Like as a village, people took care of their elders, they took care of the young ones, and a lot of it was for survival, because this group over here was fixing dinner, and so this group over here was taking care of anyone who needed taken care of, more of a tribal society. So enter in the industrial age where we are so busy about making our work and making ourselves happen and doing all these things. And then all of a sudden we're raising children, and then, now we have to take care of our parents because they're all living, so much longer. And so it's so easy to get wrapped up into, this isn't fair, I don't want to do this. And in almost every family I've ever talked to, it usually falls to one or two people of the siblings. It's kind of rare that all the siblings share the responsibility, for the elders. And so that is a recipe for resentment. And, I can talk about all this stuff fairly peacefully, but believe me, I still have my moments. I am on this journey, and being on the journey and having the consciousness grow is an amazing one, and I try to just be continually grateful for it. But that doesn't mean every moment I'm loving what I'm doing. It's not like that at all, It's really not. But again, if you just kind of step back and go, well, how does God look at this? How does and inviting that God self to come through, and hold that loving space, and then our kids of this generation have this whole huge internet thing going and all this media stuff. And it is amazing how much, I saw this from very early on. My son didn't watch anything for 2 years, and then, we kind of slowly introduced it. But I started noticing, if he would watch certain programs, he would act in a certain way, that he didn't seem like him, but. And so and I could sit up here and tell you all the things that's wrong with that, and that's bad. But they're the most global citizens yet because of the internet, there is the video game thing. That's a whole nother discussion, unfortunately. But our kids have, the good news is they have the whole world open to them, and the bad news is they have the whole world open to them, And so as parents, we have to navigate all of that. It's one thing to be unconditionally loving and accepting and all that, but there are some very basic things that should be happening as a parent. And when I studied education, I love the teachings of educare. The word educare means to grow from childhood into adulthood. And I would like to add to that, it also means to help shepherd the ones who have gone from adulthood back into childhood. But it says that you have to have 3 equal levels of trust, understanding, and authority. And authority not as an authoritarian, like this is the way it's going to be, but authority meaning there's some safety, there's some structure, and it's been a fascinating thing for me to watch with my parents, how they need more and more of that as their world kind of closes in on them. They can't hear as well. They can't, in my mom's case, she can't see out of one eye. It's like different things happen to their body temple to where they're getting smaller and smaller. And so the need for the trust and the understanding and the authority, as in the safety and the structure, is really prevalent. So that's another thing that I've used as a template over the years.
So neither one of these is easy. Parenthood is not easy.
Right.
Parenting your parents is not easy. What about parenting yourself?
Yeah, so I love that Unity, we always sing that song, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And it's exactly that. It's exactly the thing they tell you on the airplane. If you don't put that oxygen mask on, you're going to end up on the floor, and the baby's going to end up without someone to take care of them, right? And this is another thing that I continually struggle with. But what has gotten me kind of through is this relationship that I have with my inner child. And some of you may experience that or may want to invite that in. Other people may want to call it more like your intuition. You have all these different systems that are built in for guidance, those inner GPSs.
grace positioning systems, But for me, the inner child is the one that helps me be happy. And when she's unhappy, I'm unhappy. And so I've just had this relationship with my inner child for a long time. Other people have different ways of putting it. So it can be just as simple as taking care of yourself, just taking care of your needs. And women especially, and mothers, we're just so dang good at putting everybody else first. And I'm still living this. Like, my dad's taxes are done, and I had to file an extension, And so I had a few complications in 2018, not the least of which was coming here and getting a W-2 for the first time, but in a long time. But anyway, it becomes a choice of priorities. And so in my dad's case, his taxes were much easier than mine, so just get that done and go. But no matter if it's logistics of the doctor or, all the different things that come up in our lives, having your spiritual practice, having your play practice, some of the things, making sure that you take care of you, body, mind, and spirit is basically what it comes down to. And again, just if you think about what it is to parent, it's to take care of. Really, it's to take care of. And so if you don't take care of yourself, you will get burned out. You will get resentful. You might get sick. You might get breast cancer. You might, there's a lot of different ways it could go down. So it's about knowing you, taking heart time, and letting spirit flow through you so that your needs are met, and finding ways to prioritize yourself. And it's not easy.
Well, and that's the whole thing of we use this around here quite a bit, is knowing what's mine to do and knowing what's not mine to do.
Right, definitely.
And allowing those things to sit, to be. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it means allowing something to break. And that's, I think, what so many people have trouble doing is, because it's like, if I'm a wreck, I'm no good to you. Mm-hmm. I'm no good to whatever. I need to be in my best place, in my best shape, to be able to do my job, whatever that job is.
Absolutely. And what I have found, and I was just reminded of it again this week, because I had this college trip last week, and then we came back and we did this thing at the high school, and then I was here for the big Sunday, so I was telling myself all weekend, I'm taking Monday off. I'm just taking Monday off. And then I get home and I realize there's so many things that I'm not willing to just say, no, I can't go to that meeting for you. No, I can't do this. No, I can't do that. So I'm reminded that how I can best take care of myself these days when I have so many responsibilities and stay happy is to take these little mini vacations. And by mini, I mean an hour or a couple hours. And so I had this conversation with my little girl. I was like, okay, so what do you really need to do? And she's like, paint. She always says that. She loves to paint. And I was paint. I was like, okay, well, we'll paint. Well, Monday went and I didn't paint. And I got more and more grumpy. And then I went to this meeting, at the school, and I was just like, And then I went out for a beautiful nature walk, and that totally reset me and everything. But Tuesday morning, before I did anything else, I just got out all my paint stuff and I started painting. And as I was painting, I just got so much clarity and so much peace about things that, were still pending, but and that can be anything for you. And it doesn't have to be a conversation with your inner child. It could just be letting yourself do what you love. And, for some people, we're big people. We can sit down and have a glass of wine. And if that's a great relaxing thing for you and it's not a big problem for you, then, I'm not going to tell you have to be a little kid, like paint or, build with rocks or whatever. I mean, it's whatever brings you joy or comfort or peace or whatever you need. And it's allowing that knowledge to come and then being willing to act on it. And I'm a master at creative avoidance. So I got so much done on Monday, but I didn't paint, and I didn't feel good about that. Like, I was really grumpy, So it sounds silly, but it's just the little things, And if you can't take a vacation, just try to figure out something you can do for that hour or a half a day, or, and I'm really big on nature. Nature is so there for us. So even if you're living here in the city and it doesn't seem like you have a lot of nature, I am like, go talk to a flower, go hug a tree, go just look at the sky, if you don't want people getting too, like, what is that person doing over there with that tree? But for me, it's about finding the divine, because the divine will bring us back to our heart every time. And so for me, nature, every time I look at any creation in nature, it's just so divine to me. And for you, that might be different. You might, I don't know, look at a building that's fabulous architecture and just really, that might bring some peace and joy to your heart. Like, look at that divine order. Look at that, what that person did, or so that had to come out of someone's head, and then those hands had to get to, So it's really what speaks to your soul is really what it comes down to. And so finding those soul moments.
Well, and I think the point that you're making that's so important that we mostly miss is that it can be 10 minutes, it can be half an hour. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I need the whole afternoon, or I need I need the whole day. And it's amazing what 10 minutes, 15 minutes. My favorite thing, if I'm not doing outside, is to go wander around a bookstore. Mm-hmm. I will walk around and they say, do you need help? No, I'm just taking a little vacation.
Right.
I'm good. And not even necessarily to buy anything. It's just, for me, being in a bookstore is
exactly. And
safety.
Then, and just coming back to what we were talking about before, taking away the judgment and and treating yourself with that unconditional love. So whether you call it your inner child or your wise heart or your intuition, or if you're just talking to yourself, which I highly recommend, but you just say, well, what do you really want to do right now? Or what do you really want to do tomorrow that you haven't done in a while, or just whatever. And it'll come. And what we tend to do is go, oh no, like, oh no, I have no time to paint, or oh no, like, go to a bookstore, really? But just honoring that, because those first impressions are usually the thing that your heart is really calling you to. And what I have found over and over again, not just for myself, but other people have shared with me too, it's like there's Deborah browsing in the bookstore, and she thinks she's just in there to, forget about her problems or whatever. And then she's going to have this idea that's just like gold, or a solution that she's been seeking is going to come to her, because you're in that zone of play. And vibrationally, play and pray are very much the same. And so prayer is vital and important for the spiritual journey. I totally believe that. But so is play. And we just take everything so seriously, including spirituality. We just do. We take it so seriously.
And we think play means like playing a game. I mean, for me, walking through a bookstore is playing. Right. It's relaxing. It's turning, the rest of the world, the outside world is not inside that store. And yes, I do other things too. But that is like if I'm out and it's like I'm pushing myself too hard and I really want to go home and take a nap, and I'll just pop in there for a minute and just walk around and look at all the cool stuff.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So, and naps are good too, I gotta say.
Naps.
We gotta love a nap.
Naps are sort of magical. Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay. So Laurie's going to take you through a meditation, and what we're going to do is she's going to give you some instructions, and you're going to get to come up and share some of these, and we're going to play a chant. And after she explains all of this, and then during the chant, you can come up and do whatever she's instructed you to do, or suggested that you do. And then you can go back and sit down, and we'll go into some silence. But I'll just let Laurie explain what it is she's wanting us to do.
Yeah, so the world is filled with play invitations, and mostly we don't notice. Just because we get busy and we're grown-up people. And if you've ever watched small children, and our elders can get like this too, they can't walk 3 steps without stopping and marveling at a bug or a tile or a leaf, because life is truly miraculous. So I brought some things just out of my office here, I got to admit, but they're fun things. And I'm going to invite you when the music starts to come up. Now, there's a plain white plate. There's some leftover holiday plates. You can use a plate or not use a plate. If you're taking one of the food items, and we're in the sanctuary, I suggest you take a plate. But what I really want this exercise to be for you is just to allow yourself, whether you call it your inner child or whoever, whatever you want to term it, and don't term it anything at all, come up and take what you want. You might take one thing. You might want some of everything. You might want a lot of everything. And it's good. You can do that. I'm going to ask you to take what you want, go back to your seat, settle in as the music is playing and winding down. Then we're going to have some time of silence. And I might say a little bit when the silence starts, but I want to leave you in silence. And my invitation to you is, like, for instance, if you took food, you might want to eat it and just enjoy it and think about where it came from or not, whatever. But you might not want to eat it. You might want to play with it. You might want to talk to it. I'm going to invite you to listen to whatever is called your heart to put in your hands and put before you. And what you hear might be something completely different than what you would have imagined is going to come to you. You might not hear anything at all. That's okay. You may choose to just go, okay, this is a little strange, and then I'm going to meditate and then be in my heart and be in my silence, and that's all good too. But just play with it around, play with it. Come get what calls to you. Okay, thanks.
There's a place that I go.
Welcome to come up.
There's a place